Come on, I've been trying to talk to you for months. Just open up. Oh, this eviction moratorium has screwed me over on so many of my real estate deals. But you know what? The government can't protect you forever because guess what? The moratorium is coming to an end. Are you ready? I know I am. Here's the plan.
One shot, now the future is yours. Go! I'm turning dreams into reality. Yeah, it's one shot, now the future is yours. Go!
Eviction moratorium's coming to an end. Oh my gosh. So excited. You understand that literally mayhem hit the fan last year when the government said, well, guess what? Landlords, we understand that 30% of all houses in America are rented out. But if people can't work or if they lose their jobs, then you can't evict them. On the one hand, that really makes sense, unless you're the one getting screwed for it. And guess what? That moratorium has been going on for a long time, but it is about to come to an end.
It's done. Yes, Mr. Frodo. It's over now.
And what happens then? You might be wondering, what is the eviction moratorium? Well, in September of 2020, the CDC, which you never knew had anything to do with real estate, right? Or the housing market, well, they issued an agency order to halt evictions. The order prohibited residential landlords, guys like me that own a lot of real estate and rent houses out to other people, basically on a nationwide level from evicting certain tenants up until June 30th, 2021. And look at where we stand. That is upon us, my friend. It's been this way now for the better part of a year, and everyone's wondering, what will happen if the government all of a sudden says, yes, if you're a landlord and you rent out a house and they're not paying the rent, you actually can evict them. Now, this order actually protected certain tenants. For example, those who have used their best efforts to obtain government assistance for housing, or those unable to pay their full rent due to substantial loss of income, or those who are making their best efforts to make timely partial payments on rent, or protect those who would become homeless or would have to move into a shared living setting if they were to be evicted. And by the way, this is a good thing. If the government said, hey, you're not allowed to work and you lose your job, then how are you supposed to pay your rent? So on the one hand, I'm really glad that the government did this. Honestly, for landlords like me, I wish they had come out with a government assistance program to say, hey, if they can't pay the rent, we'll pay it for them. It did not initially start that way, but the good news is this is about to come to an end, right? I own not a few properties, and I got people all over YouTube land that actually partner with me. We go out and buy real estate together, and a lot of people have wanted to know, hey, Kris, has the eviction moratorium actually really screwed you over? Has it hurt you? Well, turns out that if you buy real estate in the best appreciating markets, if you buy the most affordable housing, if you buy the newest and nicest housing, that even during that whole pandemic crisis, we actually did really well. The majority of our tenants stayed employed, and we had a small percent that weren't able to make their payments. And fortunately, a few months ago, the government did kick in and say, hey, we're gonna start helping out with this. But I'm not gonna lie, that's probably the suckiest thing that's happened to me in the game of real estate, in the last, I don't know, probably forever. On the other hand, my real estate has performed better than it ever has before. Like, ask yourself, do you own real estate? It's probably worth $50,000 or $100,000 more through this whole pandemic period of time. And so, yes, it has been a crunch in some ways on cash flow for probably 5 to 10% of my homes, which kind of matches the unemployment rate. But on the other hand, my real estate has gone so much up in value that I'm just trying to get my hands on as much of it as I can possibly buy. There are, of course, other criteria, requirements that people had to qualify for if they wanted the protection, such as this. You had to expect to earn no more than $99,000 or jointly $198,000 a year on your tax return in 2020.
Dude, we only made $180,000 last year. We've really been struggling to pay our rent. Thank you for understanding, landlord.
You would have also not been required to make payments if you didn't report income to the IRS in 2020, or if you received any type of stimulus check. The government is just so in touch with people's financial needs these days. That was awful generous. And I, of course, get to bear that burden. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fortunately, most people, I think, respect having a roof over their head and a guarantee that their family's not going to get kicked out or have to move. So I think, for the most part, people have been pretty good about actually making their payments when they've been able to. If you're watching this video, you're likely a subscriber on my channel, which means I'm teaching you how to make millions of dollars in real estate, business, and frankly, every financial vertical out there. And if that's the case, you've got to be wondering, Kris, if I'm about to become a landlord, if I'm going to be buying some rentals because the prices keep going up, or if I already own real estate, what should I do really to be ready for when this moratorium ends? Whether you've been paid every month or getting partial payments here and there, or absolutely have had no payments and no communication with your tenants, there are 3 things that you should plan to do right now to protect your investment. And I'm going to put these in order of best case scenario, so-so scenario, and then certainly worst case scenario. Gotta say, there is nothing better than a good tenant. A tenant who respects the house that they're in, they're grateful for it, they take good care of it. This is obviously someone that you want to retain. And this is, of course, your best scenario. If your renters have paid every month through the moratorium, it's definitely in your best interest to keep these renters. These tenants know their value and will have the power to move whenever they want because their credit and residential history is perfect. Here's a couple of ideas to keep them renting with you. Number 1, give them a discount on their rent, right? $100 a month is a lot cheaper than moving someone out, missing a month or 2 of rent, and moving someone in. Number 2, offer to upgrade the home. Might be a good time to go in and replace the carpet, do some paint, some things that say, wow, you might want to be here longer. Or number 3, you might want to set them up with a lease option. Check out the video over here where I teach you how to do lease options and make millions of dollars with them. If you've been a landlord, it's possible that you've had tenants that have been kind of okay and they've needed some management. This is what I'm going to call the okay scenario. If you've been working with your tenants and have only gotten partial payments here and there, you should take these next steps to protect your investment. Number 1, sit down, get face to face with them and let them know things are about to change and things are not the way they were before. Because there's a lot of people that get habituated to, well, it was okay before when we made partial payments. And when that rule changes, end of June, it's important that you say, hey, we need to sit down and have a DTR, define the relationship and make sure that we're all clear on how things are going to be different moving here on out. Number 2, you definitely got to let them know that the behaviors that they've shown this last year will not be acceptable in the future. Number 3, you can contact your local government. There might be some stimulus money out there to offset some of the past rent due that hasn't been paid. And then number 4, negotiate any past due rent and then renew the lease with a new mindset. Get creative and let them know that you're going to waive any of their past due monies that they might have owed as long as they re-up or if they have some kind of plan on how they're going to be able to make their payments. I got to tell you, most important is them understanding it's almost like a new contract, like you just moved in day 1 and things are going to be different from here on out. If they don't get that, it would probably be better to get rid of them, which is scenario number 3. Then again, part of the game of real estate is scenario number 3. You're going to have to replace your tenant. I am going to call this the worst case scenario because listen, if it happens on just a house, it's not the end of the world. But if you had it happen on a lot of homes, dude, there are some real estate investors, they buy on the wrong side of the railroad tracks. They get into the slum area. Those people have had a nightmare with this whole moratorium thing. Hopefully that hasn't been you. If your tenant ignores you, won't take your calls, and refuses to pay rent because of a pandemic-related reason, terminating the agreement quickly might actually be one of your best decisions. There's a couple of options that you have. For example, if you fail to receive any rental assistance money, you should contact an attorney immediately. Every state works a little differently. That attorney can help you understand the process, draw up paperwork, and basically file those papers and say, you've been served and you have X amount of time before you need to move on. Something I've been a little bit more successful with is with that greenback dollar, which is you could offer the tenant money to actually move out of your property if you do it within a certain period of time and if they keep the property in a certain kind of condition. I'm not going to lie, a couple of times I had that nightmare tenant and I just wanted them gone. And you know what? Money talks. I'm going to tell you right now that one of the best way of actually protecting your investments is to double down on the right kind of real estate. For example, assume for a moment that you just had one property. Let's just say that your mortgage was $1,200 a month. And of course, if that's the payment that you got to make to the bank and you haven't been receiving the rent, as in rent equals nada, nothing, zilch, zip, that's kind of a painful situation to be in. But let's just say that you actually balance that portfolio out with 4 other properties. There's 2 things I want you to be aware of. One, is that if you're buying the right way, the odds are in your favor. The numbers are on your side. These other houses that have mortgages, they're likely going to have their renters staying there and paying, which means that the positive cash flow, let's just say for a moment that these guys were each picking up rent of $1,500 a month. Let's also assume that it was a $1,200 a month mortgage on these. Well, that means that between the rent of $1,500 and what's owed of $1,200, there's a positive $300 a month left over. Times that by 4 more houses, and guess what? That just happens to be $1,200 a month. You can afford for one of these 5 homes not to be rented because you've got the numbers on your side. But there's a different reason to have 5 instead of 1. The number one regret people will have as they approach retirement, they don't have enough money. But you know what they will say? If they've owned a home just for themselves, it will likely over their lifetime have gone up a couple $100,000 in value. And you know what they're going to be thinking? Well, at least I have that. If you could time machine back and go get 4 more honeys just like that, and if you had $200,000 coming in on each one of them, $200,000 times 5, you know what that happens to equal? It's this number right here. It's $1 million. And you know what? I figured that out when I was in my early 20s, and that's why I went on every year and now buy hundreds of homes. Do you know why? Because I am racking up millions and millions of dollars. I'm racking up all the positive cash flow. And with the pandemic, I've had less than 10% of my homes that were basically as I was not collecting my rent money on. But because of this plan, because I had all these other houses, guess what it meant? It meant that I was able to make my payments. More importantly, do you know what has happened to the value of my assets? All of these homes have gone up in value. And for the next several years, that is likely going to continue being the case. And if you're sitting here thinking, man, I had no idea real estate could be so lucrative if done correctly, there is a link below. And I'll actually show you how to get a game plan on learning how to invest right now, hands-free. Literally, you don't have to get your hands dirty. You can own real estate. You can have someone else like me and my team doing all of the work. And what does that leave you with? Piles and piles and piles of profits, potentially millions of dollars. Tax write-offs, positive cash flow. You know, this whole thing with the moratorium coming to the end, you know what that really smells like to me? Smells like real estate is not just back in business. Smells like real estate is going to be better than it's ever been. And with this moratorium hopefully officially behind us, it's going to mean that things are only going to get gooder. And if you want things to get gooder for you, click the link below and I'll show you how to make that happen. Did you like it? Do you feel financially smarter? Then you should definitely subscribe, especially if you're committed to your financial future. That's what this channel is all about. And if you saw what I was doing over there on the whiteboard, guess what? I literally could show you in our post-pandemic world why we have the easiest opportunity in history for you to become financially free in just the next 5 years. If you want to see, check out this video and I'll show you. In fact, if you want to know 5 simple hacks on how you could... Right direction. And if you want to know how, why, and then just finish the tape. All right.